I always have trouble deciding on what story to tell you when I'm colouring, and sometimes I dive down the rabbit hole of a story armed with just a little bit of information, and what I discover after delving into the depths of the internet is that the story is not suitable for this channel. So then I have to quickly find something else. And that's a roundabout way of saying that's what I did today. So I hope that I've managed to locate all the facts that go with this story, and I'm going to warn you, this story is different from others I've told here, and I want to warn you that it does involve a child abduction, and it's a bit different from other cases. It's a bit darker than others I've told, and I also have a cold and my throat is really sore, so I apologise in advance for that. So I'm still colouring in my Lady Spring colouring book, and I'm finishing the picture today. I may do a background offline, and I'm still using the Colleen pencils, which unfortunately are not labelled with numbers or names. So let's get to the story, which takes place in Japan. It was March 2014 in Osaka, Saitama, which is located 15 miles from the bustle of Tokyo. It's well known for the prestigious schools and universities in the area it's located in, and it was here that a young girl, just 13, who we will call Anna, but that is not her real name, was in her first year at the local elementary school. After spending the day at school, Anna began to walk home when school finished at 3:30. She needed to be home by 4, as these were her parents' rules, and Anna was not a rule breaker. She was well known for her punctuality. Her parents arrived home from work that Monday, and the house was empty. There was no sign of their sweet, intelligent daughter, and this was completely unlike her, and you can imagine the panic they must have felt. There was no reason for her not to be at home. And although she studied ballet, there were no ballet lessons that day, no after-school activities that she was required to go to. It would be completely unlike her to go shopping or a friend's house without seeking permission first. The parents did what most parents do. They searched the area, including their own home. They rang her friends to see if they knew where she was. They asked the neighbours to help them search. People walked the streets calling her name and tracing the route from her school to her home, but there was no sign of Anna, and by now the weather had dropped and it was freezing cold. It was then that they decided to check their mailbox. Now inside the box was a letter, and it was from Anna to her parents. It said, "I'm taking a break from school and home. Don't come looking for me now." The note was surprising to everyone. For one, Anna was not the type of girl to run away from home. She was smart and active at school. Her teachers spoke highly of her, and she was a member of the student council. She had dreams of her future, and running away from home just wasn't something that was on her agenda. Now the letter, though, was in her writing, and it was clear that Anna had wrote it, but it just didn't make sense that she would want to run away, that she also wouldn't take anything with her. Her room was searched, and her possessions, they were all there, including items that she treasured, that she would have taken with her if she'd run away. The only items missing were the items that she was wearing that day for school. The parents wasted no time reporting Anna missing, and by that night the police search for Anna had started. And it was good that they were on top of things, because they soon got a lead. A neighbour came forward and reported that he had seen Anna wearing her school uniform on her way home that day. And importantly, Anna was not alone. The neighbour reported that she had been seen talking to a young man. Now there wasn't much in this lead, although the police made inquiries. Nothing really came of it. And days went past, and still nothing was heard from Anna. And there were no further leads or anything identifying this young man that she'd been speaking to. Then, after another 9 days, another letter was found in the mailbox. Now, this letter didn't have a stamp, but it did have a postmark on the letter, which showed it had been posted in Shiba Prefecture, which is about 25 miles east of Tokyo. The letter was from Anna, and it said, "I'm doing fine. I apologise for causing so much stress. Don't look for me." The handwriting was analysed and it was confirmed to be Anna's, but the way it was written and the tone of it, it didn't sound like her. It was beginning to look like Anna had written the letter based on it being dictated to her what to say, and that would indicate an abduction scenario rather than a runaway. Now, officers did make inquiries at the Chiba Region Post Office, but in reality, unless you could have vision of someone posting a letter at an exact time, it really wouldn't help. And just because the letter was posted in the area, it really didn't mean that that was where the suspect or Anna may be. So Anna's parents and the police continued their search. They followed up leads, they waited, they hoped for another letter to arrive or any clue to where Anna was. Days passed, weeks, months, nothing was heard from Anna. Anna's parents were proactive in trying to locate their daughter. They printed out flyers and posters. They made sure to hand them out whenever they could, and her poster was featured as a missing person throughout the region. Nearly 2 years went past before Anna was heard from again. It was Easter Sunday, 27th of March 2016. Anna's mother heard the phone ring. She picked up the phone and she was stunned to hear a voice that she knew so well on the other end of the line. It was Anna. Anna quickly told her mother that she was at a payphone at the Higashi Nakano train station and she had managed to escape, taking some money from her captor, but she was cold. She was just wearing a thin pair of sweatpants and sandals as she stood at the green phone box making the call her parents had dreamed of. Anna's mother quickly advised her to find someone in authority at the station to be with her and get them to call the police, and she would also. And both mother and daughter then called the police, who soon arrived and escorted Anna to the Nisa police station in Saitama. Now, even though she was no longer in a school uniform and she was 2 years older and grown like 5 centimetres, she was clearly recognisable as the same girl featured in the missing persons posters at the station, and she still had her student ID identifying her. Meanwhile, the police made their way to the area where Anna told them she'd been held captive, which was only a few hundred metres from the train station. After being checked over in hospital, she was reunited with her parents, who were overwhelmed with having their daughter home and how much she'd grown in the years that she'd been missing. Her captor, Kubikowska, found out that Anna had escaped, and it's not sure how. Maybe after he returned from purchasing his new mobile phone at the shopping centre, he had seen the police presence in his apartment. Whatever the reason, he decided that he was not returning to his apartment. It would be Monday before Kabu would be found wandering around near a forest. A newspaper delivery man over 100 kilometres away passed a man on his scooter. The man looked in bad shape, smelling of beer and whiskey. He was wearing jeans, gloves and carrying a black bag, but he was shaking and trembling, and he was bleeding from a small self-inflicted wound to his neck. A number of people called the police about this strange man in Western Tokyo, but when the delivery man called the police, they soon picked up Kabu, and on inspecting his licence, they contacted their colleagues in Chiba. In his pocket, they found a note written on the back of a receipt which said, "I've done something serious. I feel sorry for the family." Kabu was taken to hospital for medical treatment, and on discharge was arrested for kidnapping and taken into custody on March 31st. He told the police, "I have no excuse. I did not know the girl I kidnapped." Meanwhile, Kabu's father was horrified that his son had been arrested and said, "I must make contact with him. It seems that the two hadn't been in a lot of contact recently." Anna's parents, of course, gave a press conference, and her father was quoted as saying, "In the apartment in Chiba, which is where Kabu lived, the door outside was locked from the outside, and Anna couldn't escape even if she wanted to. When they moved to another apartment, she decided that she could get out, and perhaps because the doors were not locked in the same way. but her father said she's very cautious and she wouldn't act until all the conditions allowing her to escape were right. What happened to Anna in that nearly 2 years of time would soon come out at the trial of Kubikowska, which would start in September of 2016 when Kubu was 24 and Anna was now 15. And that's when everyone found out what had gone on during those 2 years. Now, Anna gave evidence that Kubu had abducted her on her way from school. She was almost outside the front of her home when a car pulled up and Kubu called out her name. He explained he was a lawyer representing her parents. She was told to get in the car as her parents were divorcing and she needed to come with him to his office. The fact that he knew her name reassured Anna, so she got in the car. When she got in the car, some sources say she was blindfolded. Kubu, of course, did not go to any local law office. Instead, he drove to his apartment in Sheba. Now, once at the apartment, he told her her parents were in a lot of debt. They didn't want her. They wanted to sell her or get rid of her. And it seemed he was actually doing her a favour by saving her from this horrible fate. At the time, Kubu was an engineering student. He wasn't a lawyer at Chiba, and Kubu seemed to grow up in a happy home with parents that were wealthy. His father owned a home security company specialising in window locks and other home security items. Despite these advantages, Kubu often found himself lonely without friends, and by the time he hit high school, he was bullied and became somewhat of a recluse. And of course, this had the effect of making him seem a little creepy to many as well. Now, although this must have been a difficult time for Kubu, he managed to do well academically. He studied aviation at Tokyo and then went to the next level and obtained his pilot's license in California. He then returned to Japan to study engineering at Chiba University, which was opposite his apartment. And according to one of his professors at the time, there was nothing that really stood out about him. He was just an average student, not suspicious. It was around this time, though, that Kubu started to have some pretty dark thoughts. He wanted to capture someone and basically conduct an observation experiment on them. He wanted to see how they would react, both physically and mentally, by isolating them from society, how they would change if he was the only contact who interacted with them. Anna wasn't a person to him. She was an experimental subject. And he knew that he would have to have the right person. He had to have someone that he could control. A young girl would be ideal because he could control her easily. By February of 2014, his thoughts of abduction were now becoming a plan. He looked online at the maps in the area to find the perfect place for him to carry out his abduction, and he settled on the town of Osaka where Anna lived, as it wasn't too small or too big. During March, he spent a couple of days driving around the area looking to find the perfect girl for his experiment. Now, the area seemed just right for his purposes. He cruised the streets around school time looking for a young girl that he could easily take, and it was on one of these trips that he noticed Anna walking home alone. He noticed which house she went into, and later he returned to the house. He was able to obtain enough information from mail and other things around the home to know her name. One of those things was actually believed to be a painted flower pot sitting outside of the home that had her name written on it in paint. Now, a week later, he returned to Osaka. He had attached a fake license plate to his car. Around 4 p.m, he noticed Anna walking home from school alone again that day, and Kubu pulled up the car alongside her. Anna was almost at her house when he called her name. She was then taken to his apartment in Chiba. His abduction had been successful, but now it was time to start the experiment. It would consist of repetition, manipulation, brainwashing. He told her constantly, "Your parents have abandoned you. No one is looking for you." Anna was led to believe that he was the only one with her best interests at heart. While in the apartment, she was locked in her bedroom, and the apartment was locked, but she was not restrained in any way. She was then forced to write letters to her family that they would later find in the mailbox. Of course, if her parents had abandoned her, there would be no need for the letters, but you can't expect a young girl who has been abducted and psychologically tormented to process that. During the day, he would attend his engineering classes at Chiba University, where he seemed to blend well into university life. After class, he would return home to the apartment block where he lived, usually with groceries that the neighbours would say would be enough for just one person only. During this time, no one seen or heard another person in Kabu's apartment at all. And later it would be revealed that Anna had access to the internet, and there she would be able to order food for herself and cook it in the apartment. Kabu continued to tell Anna that her parents didn't want her. She had no one. She was the only one. He was the only one that cared for her. Sometimes he even had her write it down over and over in a notebook that she was abandoned. No one cared for her but Kabu. On one she wrote, "I want to run away," and he reacted by increasing the security and locks and cameras in the house. As part of his experiment, he transcribed all her conversations to analyse later. All the time, he repetitively told her that her parents were not going to come for her, that they didn't want her, that they would have sold her, but for him. Kabu had his own notebook as well, where he kept track of Anna and how she was coping with her confinement, being abandoned, alone both physically and mentally, and he would constantly emotionally manipulate her into believing she was all alone in the world. Kabu also spent time researching brainwashing techniques and cult behaviour to ensure he was in complete control of her emotions and could manipulate her further. He started to spike her drinks with the seeds of the morning glory flowers, which have hallucinogenic properties. While under the influence of this plant, he would continue to brainwash her, telling her that she was all alone, her parents didn't love her, and he would have her write these things in the notebook. He hadn't broken her yet, though. She still had the spark to try and escape. A few weeks in, she seen her opportunity. Kabu had not locked the door, so she quickly ran outside and found herself at a park over the road. Anna very politely and timidly approached a woman with a baby to get help. Now, I'm not sure what Anna said to her exactly, but the woman told her she was busy and wouldn't help her. And I can't imagine how this poor young girl felt with being rebuffed like that, but she didn't give up. Maybe she thought Kabu was right, no one cared about her. But in the distance she noticed a police patrol car and she made eye contact with the driver. As she made her way towards the safety of the car, it drove off before she could even reach it. At a loss as what to do, she went back to the apartment, with Kabu none the wiser that she'd been so close to escape. Not willing to give up on the chance to escape, with the door unlocked, Anna later returned to the park. This time she tried an older woman to ask assistance, but again she was refused. And it seemed that no one would help her, and she had nowhere to go. No one wanted her, so she went back to the apartment. Now, Kabu didn't seem to find out about these escapades, and sometimes he allowed Anna to come out with him. She would sometimes go to dinner with him or to a supermarket with him, being forced to hold his hand tightly so she could not escape. Meanwhile, Saitama Police in 2015 started a big distribution campaign of posters for Anna's return, and they worked with Anna's father throughout the region. Anna, who actually had access to the internet, seen the poster online, and she finally knew that her parents were looking for her. Her father was out there handing out posters everywhere. She could see that they hadn't abandoned her, that they loved her and cared for her, and she knew she had to find a way to get out. During this time, Kabu actually moved apartments. No one in the apartment complex had been aware that Anna was even there, and it seemed during the day she was incredibly quiet. There wouldn't be an opportunity for Anna to escape, though, because Kabu took Anna and put her in a trunk like a large suitcase to make the move. They ended up in a small flat in a busy residential area with neighbours either side and above, but no one knew of Anna. Not long after this apartment move, Kabu graduated from his engineering course and the pair soon moved from Chiba to Tokyo. It would only be 5 days after graduating that Kabu would be arrested. Now, by now it was March, and Anna once more seized the opportunity to escape when Kabu left the outside door unlocked when he went out to purchase a mobile phone. She took the opportunity and ran with some yen that she had found and the notebook that Kabu wrote in, and she ran to the railway station. She used the money to call her mother. Anna found someone at the station to keep her safe, and this is where our story started. Now, Kabu's father would say in a telephone interview that he was shocked to hear about his son's involvement. They had not spoken with his son in quite some time, and it seems maybe there was some form of estrangement there. Before the trial, Chiba University would also strip Kabu of his degree. At the trial, Kabu admitted to kidnapping Anna, who he had referred to as an examination subject in it, and he stated he was incredibly sorry. He claimed he confined her for the first weeks, and after that she stayed because she wanted to. Now, Kabu's defence blamed his actions on his childhood, where he was bullied and an undiagnosed psychiatric disorder. At one stage, the trial had to be postponed when Kabu started to act oddly in court. When Kabu appeared in court, he was making odd noises and referring to himself as a fairy from the forest, and making bizarre and odd statements. He further claimed that he didn't understand Japanese and he was now an amiibo, a single cell, and both parties agreed that Kabu would have a psychiatric assessment by the court. The trial recommenced in 2017 after Kabu had that assessment, which was found that he was on the autism spectrum and he may also be suffering from schizophrenia. The defence argued that due to his diminished capacity, he couldn't be found guilty of the crimes. But the prosecution was keen for Kabu to serve at least 15 years in prison, and Adana's mother wanted Kabu to serve life. Initially, the judge decided that he had the capacity and he was liable for the crimes, the evidence of the fake number plate being really important to prove that. The judge said in the ruling that he was aware of the illegality of his acts and he made attempts to prevent them from being revealed, such as attaching the stolen number plate. The presiding judge handed down a prison term shorter than sought by the prosecutors, saying that the physical confinement was moderate. The prosecution felt that the sentence was far too light, bearing in mind that he had kidnapped Anna, tormented her for nearly 2 years as part of his experiment. In the end, he was given a 9-year prison sentence for abducting Anna, and neither the defence nor the prosecution was really happy with this. The defence felt that he should be able to walk free or at least get treatment for his mental health issues. A year later, after fighting in the courts, that 9-year sentence was then extended to a 12-year sentence. Meanwhile, Anna has been left with long-term issues, including PTSD, flashbacks, panic attacks, a sleep disorder, and difficulty adjusting to society and others. As well as these problems, she didn't have the benefit of completing her education and obtaining her school certificate, although her school at her graduation included Anna, even though she was still missing at that time, saying that they all will be graduating alongside Anna Sato, which is a Japanese term for unidentified minor. At that time, it was still hoped that Anna would be found, and thankfully she was. One positive note is that her school decided to give her her diploma anyway, so that she was able to have that. Kabu is scheduled to be released from prison in 2028, and by that time Anna will be about 27, and hopefully she will have had the therapy that she needs to help her on the road to recovery from this terrible ordeal. It's a pretty interesting case. From an experiment point of view, it's completely unscientific and really not thought out well at all. personally, I don't think it was ever an experiment. I think it was just someone that wanted to psychologically abuse somebody because he'd been bullied in the past and he wanted to torment someone else that couldn't fight back. But I think Anna's reaction, although she still had that ability to escape, I feel like that there's a lot of Stockholm syndrome in there, that she felt that there was nowhere to go, that her captor was basically her own friend. And it wasn't until that she seen that her parents were looking for her and did care that she was able to escape again and make her way home. And all the people that she'd asked for help just reinforced what her captor had told her, that no one wanted her. So on that note, let's hope that Anna is doing well in the future. Yeah, I'll leave it like that. This one was a lot darker than usual and not the best fairy in the forest. So that's it from me. Until next time, stay safe and happy colouring.